morning in about 2006, I literally woke up out of my bed and said, I want to move to Africa. And it took me 2 years to get there. But I wanted to have that experience in life. I've lived and worked in many places and traveled, but I wanted to have the experience. My goal and ultimate first opportunity was to move to Cape Town, to South Africa. And I had a job opportunity there. I was a consultant. I do leadership development work. And so I was going to work with some young leaders in Cape Town. And then I became ill and was bedridden for a year while I recovered, and was told I wouldn't be able to move, much less fly. And then a phone call came from a friend of mine who said there's a project that the U.S. government is operating in Ghana, and the leader of it has become ill, and they need someone to take over the project. Would you be interested? And I had never really thought about Ghana as a place to go. I mean, the first thing I thought to myself is, wow, that's like real Africa. That's not South Africa. So I went in, I interviewed, and they made me an offer the same day I interviewed for the job. And then the next thing I knew, within 30 days, I was arriving in Accra. I had never set foot in Africa, or much less in Accra or Ghana, ever before. And I packed up and moved there sight unseen. When I came through the airport, it was early morning. You know, it was because I took a red eye from New York, and I arrived in Accra at the airport. And I came out the gate, and everybody was there. People waiting for the whole families go to the airport, and everybody, for as far as I could see, was black. And I don't mean, I'm a black man. I'm dark. They were dark, like me. I saw blackness in forms, in features that I had never seen. I didn't know black people looked the way I've seen black people. I don't know if that even makes sense. Like, you don't know it if you're there, and you don't know it if you're here. But when you leave here and you go there, you see that the diversity of what it means to be black is so broad in ways that we don't understand. You know what I mean, right? Like, it's just crazy. My whole body was tingling, and I remember thinking to myself, because my mother had passed away, if she could be with me, you know what I mean? Like, that day, like, if that was a trip I could have taken with her, like, what it would have meant for her and I to be there together. That was the first moment I had. And it just was amazing. It was just an amazing experience. And, I got in the cab. I started talking immediately to the cab driver. And I don't do that in New York. I'm like, I'm going here. Take me here. That's it. I don't want to talk. But there, I couldn't stop talking. I just couldn't ask questions, and people were engaging, and it was just an incredible experience. And in some ways, a very difficult experience, because I also saw how, people talk about what's been taken from Africa, but the most important thing about the African continent are the people. It's the young people who are doing incredible things, and I would see that there, like, almost immediately, who don't have a lot. I mean, in the U.S., we throw away everything. And in Ghana, they throw away nothing. Like, no, they fix things. I'm like, what do you mean you don't fix that? They fix it. It's different. I can't explain it. It was incredible. It was a really, really, really incredible experience for me. And one that I want for every black person. I really do. You've changed me, for the better. It made me more compassionate and more sensitive and more patient and more proud to be who I am. Because my story stops where the big story of slavery begins, and that's not the case any longer. It's happiness in that. What you're asking me to do really is comparing apples to oranges, because what we believe happiness is in the U.S., I think we're learning is false. Because we know too many people, particularly black people in this country, who achieve all of the things that we think will make us happy: success, money, wealth, fame. And the moment they appear to have all of those things, they explode. They fall, and they embarrass and shame themselves and others. We have so many examples of that in this country. And yet you think to yourself, well, they should have been so happy. They had everything. How did they lose it? Or you see their families fall apart, or they go through divorce after divorce after divorce. What I learned in Ghana is that happiness comes from a different place, and that it's not dependent upon what you have in that sort of material way. It's dependent on who you have. And one of the biggest differences, I think, in all of Africa, but my experience in Ghana and in the U.S. is the structure of family. So in the U.S., we have nuclear family. We have a mother or father. We don't really even have that anymore. We have a mama and a child. You know, most people are growing up in single-parent households, and I know that's happening more across Africa too. But your relatives, your family, are the people who share your bloodline, and those are often weak connections. In Ghana, you know, I love the phrase in Africa that it takes a village, and so everybody is your family. You're connected, you know, and I've seen that in the Caribbean as well. And so it's just, you know, it's a different sort of understanding. I don't know if that makes sense. And I never understood that until I got to know how people live in Ghana and what it takes to be happy as a Black person in the world. True, I did interact with kids, actually, because the people on my team and the people who worked for me all had families, and so what I would observe is that the younger children were very respectful. You know, I know this for a lot of kids. The first thing you have to realize that's different for an African American is that in Ghana, when I lived in Ghana, I was, for the first time ever in my life, in a Black country. And I had no concept of what that meant, that I could get lost in the crowd, that everybody looked at. Usually I grew up in America being the only Black person in the room, so everybody looks at me and knows where I am and that I was there. In Ghana, that's what it's like to be white, and so that is a big difference. But what I saw in Ghana were children who were raised often in a very religious, you know, framework, so they had that as a framework. But they were raised also with kids to play, because kids today in the U.S., they play with their technology. They don't play with each other. But in Ghana, you know, in part, depending on where, every child doesn't have a cell phone or an iPad or a Xbox. I mean, those are not things that every child has. And if one child has it, then lots of children have the opportunity to experience it. So there's just a way in which I think learning how to be in community is something that the children there learn. You know what I mean? In a way that we don't learn here. But they're kids, right? Kids are kids. They're, you know, and they pretty much act the same. But the consequences are different too. And I think that's the other thing. You know, a young Black child in America has to fear for his life from the moment he leaves the house and goes to school. Every single day, anything can happen to him. I don't think that's something, that a concept that a young Black child in Ghana understands in the same way. It took me a while. I wasn't the kind of person that went to Africa and wanted to get off the plane and kiss the ground and learn my Ghanaian name and, you know, having a Dinka symbol tattooed on my arm. That was not me. I didn't have that kind of romance. But the more I was there, Africa got under my skin, you know, and like the food was so easy for me to just. The first time I had Shito sauce, oh my God. It was like my mouth had been looking for that my whole life. And I go to other countries, and I've traveled all around the world, and I've tried out many different cuisines, and they feel foreign, if you know what I mean. But the food in Ghana didn't feel that, but didn't taste. My body didn't react to it as